An art style is a series of deliberate mistakes. You see, most artists, when they're making their art, are trying to make a representation of real life with their work. Sometimes that will be a very cartoony or stylized representation of life, and for some, that will be very, very close to real life. But the things that define an art style are the deliberate mistakes that people are making to alter their work from looking exactly like real life. And don't let the term mistakes throw you off. It's absolutely not meant as a negative. And to further emphasize that, take a look at crosshatching, for example, a rendering style used by many of the world's best comic book artists to represent value, light, and shadow in their work. This is a deliberate mistake. In real life, shadows don't appear as a series of little hatched lines, but it's a very visually appealing way to represent shadows and values that has proven to be pretty generally widely appealing to comic book readers, which is why a lot of comic book artists do it. And of course, no artist is perfect. Not all alterations from real life are done on purpose. Obviously, most artists, and especially young artists or aspiring artists or people who are early in their career, will be making a lot of non-deliberate mistakes. And that's where I think this definition can be really helpful to you in finding your art style and making it something that represents exactly what you want people to get out of your art. You need to figure out what parts of your artwork are deliberate mistakes and what parts are just things you're not great at drawing yet. And I emphasize yet, because you can get great at drawing anything. It just takes time. But that's why, regardless of the kind of art you want to make, whether cartoony or realistic, you have to learn the fundamentals of anatomy and perspective and shading and lighting. You have to know how to draw this stuff somewhat realistically and see how it works in real life so that you can then make a stylized version of it that works for you. Here's an experiment that I think will be really helpful. Take a drawing of yours that you've done recently that you think is a really great representation of your current artwork and your current style. If you don't have one, draw a fresh one. I'm going to use a drawing from one of my most recent videos where I turned Pokemon into superheroes because I really loved how the proportions and anatomy turned out on this Swampert superhero. I think it's a great representation of my personal art style. But there are also a few things about it that I'd like to change and tweak and improve on going forward. Now I want you to go through every single limb and section of the character and ask yourself, why did I draw this part this way? Was it on purpose? Was it just instinct? And then most importantly, do I love how this looks? Again, you're trying to determine if the things that you're doing in your artwork that aren't realistic are deliberate mistakes or non-deliberate mistakes. On this piece, for instance, let's zoom in on the legs, because legs are something that I notoriously had a lot of problems with for a long time and only recently got to a point where I was liking how I drew them. And this is very obviously not what real human legs look like. The calves are huge and I think are even bigger than the quads. And I honestly don't know why I liked that or when I started liking that, but I really do like big calves, so I worked it into my style. The feet are also pretty massive and the character has no ankle bones. But the small size of the ankles contrasts with the large size of the feet to really emphasize the exaggerated proportions, which I really love. The shading and lighting is also done in a cel-shaded way, represented by a solid line instead of being represented in a more faded, gradual line, which would be more realistic for a rounded shape like the quads. But these harsher lines add a cartoony element that's really visually appealing to me. All of these different elements, while they don't represent what real life looks like, are aesthetic decisions, or deliberate mistakes. But there are also some examples of non-deliberate mistakes on this piece. For instance, take a look at the two different feet. They're different shapes. One is very rounded, which was my intention for this piece, and one has a very harsh line on it. I was going for more rounded shapes for the feet, while sometimes I do like to do sharper angles for the feet depending on the character's personality or attitude, but in this case, I was going for rounded and I didn't do it on one of the feet. This is a non-deliberate mistake. Also on this leg, you can see there's a line here that in the inking stage I'd intended to imply the rectus femoris muscle, one of the larger muscles of your upper leg. I should have either further emphasized this in the shading stage with a shadow, or just left it out entirely. With a piece that has this many cartoony elements, I very easily could have just left it out and kept the leg a more cartoony, simple, rounded shape. And then there's something like the knees, which I turned into these simplified triangle kind of shapes, and I had done that deliberately, but looking back now, I'm not sure if that's what I want to do with my character's knees going forward. And in fact, in that same video that this character's from, I drew Darkrai as a superhero, and the knees on that character I simplified even more and melded them more into the legs, and I think I like that better. Although I will probably experiment with how I draw characters' knees more going forward, because I think I can find something that I like even more than either of these examples. I won't go through all of the anatomy on one of my characters because at this point you're probably getting the idea. Go through all of the different aspects of your character, analyze all of the sections of the anatomy and the rendering, breaking down all of the little pieces, and take notes. Figure out what parts of the drawing are deliberate mistakes, what parts are non-deliberate mistakes, and what parts were done on purpose, but don't necessarily work for your style going forward. And this will very likely be an ever-shifting and changing thing in your work throughout your entire career. I've been working professionally as an artist for 8 years now, and I just recently got my art to a point where I look at my work and very regularly go, "This looks awesome. This is me. This is Christian Pearson's art style." And I should point out, it is a good idea to be able to work in a bunch of different art styles because depending on what kind of job you have, different clients are going to want you to be able to do different kinds of art. I know when I was working as an animator, I had to be able to do a ton of different animation styles for different projects from different clients. And the variety can actually be really nice, but it can also sometimes feel like you're not making something that's distinctly yours. And I know for some people, the ultimate goal is to figure out their style and be able to draw comics or posters or really whatever you want in that style and make a living doing it. And as someone who now makes a full living drawing and making videos on whatever art stuff I want for this channel, let me tell you, it feels so awesome and is absolutely worth the grueling hours of working and learning that you're going to have to put in. And of course, I'm not done learning, and nobody ever really is. Even your favorite artists are probably still trying to improve. So just remember to celebrate the little victories when you get them and never give up. Even when you get to a point where you're loving a lot of your artwork, there are going to be pieces that you finish and you look at and you just go, "Oh, that sucks." Anyway, if you feel like one of your big problems is something like anatomy, for instance, really take the time to work on that and learn that. And in the description, I'll link a course that I really loved that helped me out a ton when I was learning to do anatomy better. In fact, I'll link a whole bunch of my favorite courses and videos and channels that I've learned from over the years because there is tons of helpful stuff in there. There is so much stuff you can learn online now in the age of the internet. Also, any artists whose work I've referenced in this video, I'll link their social media accounts or comics or websites or whatever. And of course, check out the drawing videos on this channel. The core of this channel is me drawing pop culture crossover kind of stuff of some of my favorite characters, putting them in different franchises or into Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever else. I'll link a playlist of my favorite videos at the end. But anyway, everybody, I hope something in this was helpful to you. It can be a really stressful journey, but also a really fun journey, figuring out how you want your art to look. So just keep going, you can get there, you can be as good or better than some of your favorite artists if you just keep practicing. But that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson, this has been Popcross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified when videos are coming out, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Happy drawing, everybody. Goodbye.